Okay, so chapter 7, it's titled The Impact of Electronic Media in Reading. And the main points are, it discusses screen time in students and the effects that it has. And it talks a lot about the increase in screen time and that's effects. So screen time has been increasing steadily and significantly over the past years with younger kids, and it's becoming even younger and younger. He even says as low as 4 years old, or not 4 years old, 4 months old. And with that comes lower academic achievement as well as more likelihood of developing ADD and ADHD. It shows decreases in language such as like vocabulary development and other things like that. He talks about how students are reading less and watching TV more. One way that he did approve of kids watching TV is if the captions are on, because if the captions are on, he argues that it's almost as if the characters are reading the closed captions to the students instead of the students just watching a movie. He advises that we don't have electronics in rooms because it increases the use of technology and electronics significantly, according to studies, and that he thinks that it would be a good idea to have parents monitor and regulate the amount of time that kids are on electronic devices, such as putting a time limit or not allowing them to do it after this time at night, making sure they're doing other things as well, because when they are watching TV, most of the time people say, oh, it's a social event or it's with family or that type of thing, but he said that over 80% of television is watched independently on your own, and it creates isolation from other people. He also does suggest that as parents, people put down their devices for a little bit more time and spend more time with their kids, because we are an example, so we want to make sure that we're going to be a good one. However, if kids are on their devices, ebooks are becoming increasingly popular, and he does discuss them. He says that they have a lot of benefits, such as they're cheaper, they last longer, schools can use them, and it's a better option as far as financially for there, and they can be interactive, so they can have videos or hyperlinks in them as well. But when used by students that are younger, so young children, he said that it is hard because they are going to be reading, which is beneficial if they're going to be on their devices, but the comprehension level of students that read on ebooks and students that read on paper books is significantly lower. So they're not going to be comprehending as much because, well, he attributes this due to the fact that they can be distracting with too many sounds and pictures and images and all of that type of thing. So then he also just has a plea towards the end of the chapter asking everyone to slow down, because he says, I'm actually gonna read it real quick. He says that if students are essentially on their computers, they are not taking the time to slow down. And if they're not taking the time to slow down, they can't be creative. Right here he says, from recent scientific observations of both humans and rats, the research is compelling that constant stimulation of the brain from multitasking debilitates brain function. In other words, it's a lot harder to have those aha moments if you don't have enough aha moments. So I just thought that that was really interesting, because I am going to be a parent, hopefully, and a teacher in the future. And as I do that, I want to create an environment where my students and my children are able to learn and read and develop cognitively in the best way possible. And I have noticed that a lot of parents will just place their students in front of a TV or give them an iPad when the parents want a break. And this is causing a lot of problems for the children later on, and it's kind of, I don't know, it's not beneficial at all in any way, because the students are then not developing skills that they should be, such as creativity, problem solving, communication skills, interactions with people, let alone the academic side of that. Anyway, that was my reflection. And then for chapter 8, it's titled Visual Literacy and Reading Aloud. And in this chapter, he talks about all of the different types of books and illustrations and the importance of illustrations in books. So he says that pictures are very important and that they can draw kids into reading as well as adults, but adults just don't take the time to appreciate the pictures as much and the illustrations. He then goes into talking about all of the design elements that illustrations have, such as lines, color, they have perspective, texture, space, and this all contributes to the tone, the mood of the story, and it can help students understand it better. But yeah, he goes on to say that we do judge books by their cover, and their covers are important because it sets the tone and the mood for the story, and so it lets us know what type of story it's going to be like. And he talks about wordless books and how some people are apprehensive about wordless books for very young kids, because how do you read a wordless book? But it does have benefits such as problem solving or creativity, or they have to work on their comprehension and think, what is this book about? What is it talking about? And then graphic novels. He goes in to talk about all of the aspects of graphic novels, such as the panels, the frame, the captions, and how they're becoming increasingly more popular, and that sometimes people say, oh, well, they're not reading, it's just pictures. But in one of the books that's one of the most popular graphic novels right now, there's 8,000 words. But students just don't know that they are reading because they're not paying attention to that. And the last thing that he talks about are interactive books, such as books that have fuzzy fur for the animals, for the pictures, and all of that kind of thing. And how that can be interesting and enticing for young children. So for my reflection for chapter 8, I just thought that it was really interesting because I think a lot of times educators kind of tend to forget about the illustrations, and we know that they are enticing for kids and they're fun, but the actual content of and the principles of understanding the illustrations and looking at them, and also like the fact that we have standards about illustrations, so we can teach about pictures and illustrations and have students create their own illustrations based on what they're working on. And I think that that would be a really good way to work on comprehension of what's going on, because if students are able to draw it, they're going to have to understand it. Yeah, but I just thought that it was really interesting that he took the time to discuss illustrations, and that he kind of gave credit to those as well, because I love illustrations and I don't read picture books anymore just because, well, unless I'm reading to kids. And so I just thought that it was really interesting that he kind of mentions that, yeah, adults just don't take the time to appreciate illustrations. Anyway, thank you.